So the Barbie movie is not quite what I was expecting. It was, you look at like the trailers and how it's set up, and it looks like just going to be like, like a fun little, Barbie goes to the real world type of adventure, a la Masters of the Universe, stuff like that. But thankfully, it's not quite that. It's more it more relates to who's in charge of making this film, because you have Greta Gerwig coming in to direct, and you have Noah Baumbach as the co-writer on the script, and it definitely does feel like a Greta Gerwig film and a Noah Baumbach film. It doesn't feel like like a Disney project where they just bring in a prolific director and they more or less play ball and they end up churning out something bland with the product there. Barbie's much different because they definitely let Gerwig and Baumbach kind of make it their type of film. It has all the hallmarks that you expect. It has the kind of like overt feminist messaging that Greta Gerwig's films usually have, and it has the existential dread that usually permeates through a lot of Baumbach's work. And I gotta say, I was not expecting to see that in the Barbie movie. I was expecting like maybe I'd see like little bits and pieces of it here and there that gets strewn about with like a safe adventure and fantasy, but no, it's actually not. This is. I think a lot of people are probably going to bring this up. This is a film with teeth. This is a film that actually gets pretty deep into what it wants to talk about with Barbie, beyond just referencing all the toys and it having like an imagination and an imaginative and colorful world with the character. There's something more to this film, and I think I love how like it never slows down too much to explain how all this works. Like, we open up on Barbie Land, which we learned is like adjacent to reality, and they have stereotypical Barbie in this world. Who's played by Margot Robbie. She's referred to as stereotypical Barbie because pretty much all the women in Barbie Land are named Barbie, with the exception of a few. Like they have like like Midge is there, and I believe like Skipper's there as well. But yeah, so Barbie lives this prim and proper life where it's just like, it's like a world where like the imagination comes to life, kind of like, like the Lego movie, in which, you're embodying this reality that's actually, more or less the mind of a child. And if you're hoping for a concrete explanation of why this is in the film, you won't get much of one. And I love that. I love that they don't really get into the weeds of it. They let it progress, because yeah, it's a weird and colorful world, and characters speak very matter-of-factly about what a utopia it is they live in, where they don't have any worries, and they don't have to worry about dying or money or politics or conforming specifically to a societal expectation. Except it kind of does linger there, and it's embodied a bit with how Barbie interacts with Ken, played by Ryan Gosling, who always the way that the film describes it, it's just like Ken exists solely so that Barbie will notice him. So you can tell that it's weird. It's a utopia that something is clearly wrong here, and Barbie soon figures it out when she starts having thoughts of death that just pop into her mind. And in order to get over this, she later realizes that she has to go into the real world to track down answers. I won't go too much into it because there's a little bit of like a twist with how they reveal this, but what it essentially is, it's more or less Barbie's mission to kind of like not just accept like her utopian hideaway and just bury her head in the sand, but also just that she wants to have more or less mortality. Like, I don't want to quite boil it down to just being that. Like, it's not like just Barbie wants to be human, like, it's like Mannequin or whatever. It's not quite that simple, but it does proceed down that route. And I love the fact that it doesn't make it that rigid, and it kind of plays fast and loose with the material, because like, yeah, Barbie Land's supposed to be like weird and imaginative, but parts of the the Los Angeles reality that she goes into is also a little bit ridiculous as well. But probably the most ridiculous place that she visits is the actual company of Mattel, in which the CEO, played by Will Ferrell, who's just tripping all over himself, both figuratively and literally, trying to, stress that he's an ally, but like a but they mock the fact that he's like a corporate ally, like he's trying to seem like, he's he's pushing like the feminist messaging with Barbie, but at the same time he's only really doing it for money. So they're very upfront with it, even though like it's mostly just Will Ferrell playing what you expect with him in this role. But it feels like this film could get very cynical very quick, and it kind of does at some points, because there's a lot of the humor is very like, kind of like in the same vein of like the Lego movie, where it's like they're aware of the problems and the weirdness of reality and Barbie Land itself. And Barbie herself will have occasional moments where she'll like point out like something, culturally significant, or aspects of, like aspects of society that you would not expect her to point out in a very analytical manner. The way that I would kind of describe it is that, like, like when characters will have like that one burst of brilliance where they keep, just saying stupid stuff and then they surprise you with something highly intelligent. There's a lot of those scenes in here with Barbie. And honestly, it would be a bit that would grow old if it weren't for the fact that like it's very astute, and it approaches this material in a much more mature manner than I would expect. Mostly just because like it finds a good balance of trying to be like blunt and overt with what it's trying to stress here, because it's a film about, challenging gender norms and, questioning what it means to not so much like grow up, but, what it means like to address reality. And it's not like one of those things where it's like Barbie's like, oh, reality sucks and I don't want to grow up. It's more or less about like recognizing the stresses and problems that come with women, and learning to not just accept them, but try to like, rise up and, try to, be more like a whole person. And I think one of the more surprising things with this too is that trying to find like a more complete self outside of gender norms also applies to Ken in this movie as well. Like there's a lot of moments in here where you think Ken is just like the dumb guy who's going to wreck everything, and the way that the film sets him up and what he experiences in reality and what he takes with him back to Barbie Land, it could have easily set him up as a simplistic villain. But they don't make him that simple. Like they make all like the simple jokes that you would make with Ken in this type of scenario, but they also give him agency, because it's not just a matter of just trying to like topple like the patriarchy, even though that does become like, a big thing that it feels like Barbie has to conquer. But it's a war that she wins not so much through just defeating it, but having empathy and recognizing the agency in people when they feel like they have to conform to gender norms. So it was honestly surprising to see this aspect in the film, especially the climax as well. Like the second to last scenes here is actually pretty profound and actually like kind of sad when you think about it too. But in like that, kind of, like, I don't quite want to say like transcendent, but like, a means of like accepting what it is to be human and what it is like, to be a woman, and the way that it embraces it, and has like some surprisingly good dialogue towards the end there. It really works out well. But of course, the way that the film is pitched, a lot of people are like, but is it really this heavy throughout? It's like, yeah, kind of. Like I said, it's very blunt and overt with what it's trying to say here. And there's a few times where you're just kind of like, oh, okay, I understand you're trying to boil this down a little bit more so that nobody will miss the messaging here. And it does, I will say, even for like this aspect of the film where it's trying to hammer home these points hard, there are a lot of moments where I just like broke out laughing at this, especially at one point where they compare toxic masculinity to being obsessed with Zack Snyder's cut of Justice League, which I like that joke has teeth because it doesn't like kind of like swim around the joke. It dives head first right into it. Which is great with like a lot of the humor. Like, and it's very knowing comedy as well. Like they bring up like, you know, like they show like the weird plastic world and how they address Barbie's many professions and all the outfits, which it feels like they get their own introduction at certain points, which is cute. But there's also like the meta nature to it is so brilliant because it allows like Helen Mirren, who does the narration in this film, to kind of like butt in and provide extra commentary. Because it feels like Helen Mirren would just be there to give like a little bit of dignity to the narration, but then she jabs into the film as well. Like at one point she cuts off one scene at just the right moment to say, if this is the theme that they were trying to stress in the film, this casting's a little bit wrong here. Which is perfectly timed because it's a moment where like Margot Robbie says, like, I've kind of like done damage to the feminist movement and I'm hideous. And then Helen Mirren butts is like, wait. You're going to say this with Margot Robbie. I won't reveal too much more like the gags, just because they're so brilliant. They're very much on the nose, but they're, a lot of people, I imagine a lot of people are going to have this criticism of the film where like they're going to say it's very on the nose and it's very blunt and there's not so much subtlety. Which is not a problem for myself, just because another way of looking at it as looking at a film which is on the nose is to look at it and say it was very on target. And there's no missing what this film is trying to say and what it's trying to stress. Like it does kind of phone in some of like the outsider messages that it wants to, not quite outsiders, not the right word, like more of like the extra issues it wants to address. Like at one point Barbie gets a savage critique where it delves into aspects of like how like feminism has been packaged and sold. It goes a little bit off the rails at that point when the person criticizing her goes into calling her a fascist for what she's pushing in there. So it kind of bogs it down through there. Like there are a few lines where it's just kind of trying to be a little bit too blunt to kind of give you kind of like a pint-sized version of the themes they're trying to say. Like look, here's all the stuff we're packing in, and we don't have a lot of room for this. So like here's this one little scene or this one little line that's going to suffice for what it's trying to push. But in terms of how the film looks, it's gorgeous. I mean, aside from just like Barbie Land, just the way that they film her, all the outfits, all the wild, outlandish, and dated colors. There's one scene in particular when Ken has like a dance-off, which transports them to seemingly to like another world, which feels like straight out of something like Singing in the Rain. And in fact, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people who are probably going to do like a side-by-side to see how much it reflects the staging of like Singing in the Rain, right? Like, the sequence where they're dancing and then it kind of goes off into like this empty and vast and colorful stage. Like there's a great sequence for that when Ken is battling with his rival Ken. Was it Ken? I think, yeah, it was Ken number 2, played by Simu Liu. And it's just it's a wondrous sight. Like it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, but it's meaningful. It doesn't feel like it's just there. Like, oh, here's the musical sequence and here's this cute little number here. It feels like all the stuff they're building up with Barbie here is amounting to, like the conflict between Barbie and Ken and trying to find their place in the world. Because like it's a PG-13 Barbie film, and of course, the obvious joke that everyone makes with Barbie and Ken is that, Barbie doesn't have a vagina and Ken doesn't have a penis. And yeah, the film does make that joke, but it doesn't rely on like, like the simplistic gags that you would have with Barbie being a fish out of water. And I think what makes this type of film work is, like I said, the maturity of it. There's one scene that I loved very early on in the film where Barbie is just trying to get her bearings in this world and trying to figure it out. And, having lived this life where everyone was happy and chipper and didn't have any worries in the world, there's this moment where she's just sitting in a park. or at least like park adjacent, and she's watching everybody, and she's seeing like people laugh, she's seeing people cry, she's seeing kids play, and she's just taking in all these emotions. And then she turns to the woman next to her, next to her, who's this very old woman, and she just smiles at her and says, "Wow, you're beautiful." And not like in, like an insulting way where she would like take it the wrong way and she wouldn't like connect with the person, but in a manner where it's just like, like she says it with sincerity that the old woman gets it. And it's just, it's a beautiful moment of just like connection and accepting all like the joys and the stresses that come with being human and woman in this world. And it's such a surprising moment. There's a lot of surprising moments in this film where you feel like it could just, fall back and just being, Barbie's a fish out of water. And there's a lot of scenes where it could set up for that, but it kind of breezes over them. Like I said, similar to like the Barbie and Ken with the genitals joke, they smooth over that really quick. And no pun intended with that. I'm sure they do a few more genital jokes, but not enough where you're just like, okay, can you lay off it? Yes, I had a Barbie when I was young, and I undressed it. I get the gag. All right? It doesn't water it down. And I think, just because there's a good balance here where it feels like a film like this has freedom where it can experiment, like I said, with those like slower moments and also the more lavish musical numbers and the weird world, and having Lizzo on the soundtrack where she does the same thing as Helen Mirren. She actually talks back. In fact, I think she actually talks back directly to Helen Mirren saying, "Don't talk over my song." So yeah, it works on a lot of levels. There's meta nature. There's the overt feminist angle, which isn't just it's not in like the paddling pool of feminism where it's just kind of like, okay, here's a little bit of like girl bossness that's going to be tossed into the picture, and we're not really going to develop it anymore past that. It actually feels like it's trying to capitalize on something here, while at the same time trying to have fun with the material and just like it's sad but a lot of fun and ridiculous at the same time. There's a great little cutaway gag where they address a different type of Barbie who specifically watches like the best version of Pride and Prejudice, which is the BBC version, which they do show in the film. Which there's a lot of like laugh out loud moments in addition to moments that are surprisingly poignant and cute. So I wasn't exactly expecting a Barbie film to have this much teeth, but I was delightfully surprised. It's not often that you expect a summer film like this to have, as much like allure in its beauty as much as it has like brains and like a solid script, which just, just having like that perfect combination of just like great staging and a theme that it's trying to stress and says it beautifully and loudly and doesn't just kind of like try to play it safe. Like, this film doesn't play it safe. It does have that viciousness and that bite to it. Maybe a little bit, like I said, a lot of people are going to say it's on the nose, and there are a few scenes just kind of like, okay, like, the little pint-sized moments. I get it, what you're trying to do here, but, I'd like it if you developed more on the central theme that you're going for here, more than just these little ones. And there are a few scenes where they do kind of fall flat. Like, there's a scene where Barbie's trying to escape through Mattel, and there's a big chase scene, and it's diced up in a way where, like, it just... I'm sure, like, the way that they were shooting it, it looked fun, but the way that they edited it, like, I wasn't quite vibing with it. I wasn't quite having the level of fun that I was expecting with it. Mostly because it feels like Will Ferrell was trying to there were a few Will Ferrell improv moments where like he's trying to find the funny stuff with the material, but it's not quite there. Like it's not like a gag that falls flat. It's just kind of like, okay, he's trying to find some fun stuff here, but it's not quite hitting. But these are like minor nitpicks aside, like in terms of like the film as a whole, it goes to places I did not expect for a summer Barbie movie. And considering that my expectations for a Barbie movie are pretty low, it was incredibly surprising to see a film like this, which is bold, which isn't afraid, which goes to areas that you would not expect. But I mean, I think like the PG-13 rating helped with that. But yeah, it's definitely not just a Barbie movie. It feels like a Greta Gerwig film and a Noah Baumbach script, and it's absolutely wonderful.